Hi, everybody.
Okay, perfect. There we go.
We're good. We're clear. So, hi, everybody. My name is Michael. I'm one of the founders of Pink Arrow, and I'm really excited to be able to speak a little bit with you guys today. Um, I don't know if we're just gonna go in a question back and forth format, Lucy, or
Yeah, I can ask questions. I just didn't know if you wanted to, introduce yourself briefly and then we
yeah,
can move into questions.
yeah. I think some of the questions touch on
Cool.
more on what we're doing. So,
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for being here. So, first, I was just starting off with like a brief kind of how many folks are a part of Pink Arrow and how did you all meet? I think that there's a big question of how mutual aid groups get started, of like, oh, are these friends? Are these community members? So, just something
yeah,
about that would be great.
yeah. No, right now, kind of like yourself, we're very new to mutual aid. How this group got started was it's actually me and my partner. Um, we're out here in West Georgia. We moved here originally for my work, and once the regime change happened, we tried to look for hey anything that was helping specifically the queer community out here in rural Georgia. And as you might know, being from Georgia yourself, out of unless you're in Atlanta or you're on the more eastern side of Atlanta, there's not a lot of options out here in the rural areas. So upon seeing that there was nothing really out here, we decided to start doing some outreach, started doing getting a social media platform started. Right now it's a very small group. Nobody's really dedicated outside of us and a few other people, maybe a handful. So it's really early days. So stuff like this really helps propel us along, and hopefully if anybody's out in Georgia, we can get to hear from them a little bit.
All right, so we do have a question of how does a mutual aid organization work?
Honestly, it's one thing that I learned when we started doing our research for this, and what we needed to do is mutual aid as a concept, as an organization, is really not as complex or scary as people will make it out to be. A lot of people think, oh, from the get go, you're building an organization that's going to touch lives all across the country. And that's not really the goal, right? The goal of mutual aid is helping people in your local community, whether that be something that's like us who are trying to focus more on the queer community and eventually kind of spread out to everybody. It's your neighbors, it's the people in your town. How it works is basically you make connections, you make friendships, you go over to your neighbor, you say, hey, do you need anything? And that's kind of the core foundation of mutual aid is, hey, do you need something? um, whether that is doing food drives, whether that is doing like community potlucks, whether that's going out and feeding homeless people, or unhoused people, sorry, and trying to just better the community in general, raising funds that you can donate to people in your community. That's the core of it, is getting to know what the needs are and addressing them.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that's a great description of it. I know that's part of why we started these info sessions is a lot of mutual aid groups popped up around COVID, but they didn't. I know in my area in Georgia, there weren't any dedicated mutual aid groups during COVID, so I didn't know about any of that. So just getting to the core of what this is and like how do you even start it, I think is a great place to start. So the next question I have is what made you feel like you could be a part of the solution?
Honestly, at first, just like anybody who's starting to have thoughts of starting an organization like this, is uh, do can I be a part of the solution? And the answer is almost always yes, because the thing is that people have a lot more skills that they use on a daily basis than they realize. Like myself, without going into great detail, I work in a lot of corporate settings, a lot of public speaking, a lot of slideshows, presentations, making little diagrams. Like even though that seems like a skill that only fits into like an office setting, that is something that is supremely important for things like running an organization. You need to be able to convey information in a way that people are interested in and conveys the message clearly. So when we are starting this, we know we have different skills, not only just from our work backgrounds, but things that we've taken on as hobbies and stuff before this. And the first step is always, hey, I have something I think I can share, or I see a problem that needs to be addressed. And the goal of what we're doing is to gather other people who are interested in mutual aid, gather other people who see the problems that are happening, and have something to share. Everybody, just like I'm good at a lot of this office setting stuff. I have
Oop, I think that the mic cut out.
That's not going through.
There we go. Now it is.
Uh, okay, there we go. A lot of mic issues today. Um, so the main thing is I have, obviously some background in graphic design, some background in office work, some other things that I know I can share with people, but I'm not great at, say, like making a home garden or an urban garden. These are things that can be really important for a mutual aid group because a lot of mutual aid groups face like funding issues. That there's not exactly something that people are just running to throw money at, and so things that can make people self-sufficient, skills that can help make people self-sufficient, are important. And that's the main thing. If you have a skill of any kind, that is going to be helpful to somebody and to some organization.
Yeah. So we have a question from the chat. How do you personally define mutual aid and what distinguishes it from charity?
So personally, the way mutual aid, unlike charity work, which is only going from like organization down, mutual aid is about everybody helping each other. It's two-way street, right? It's going in and saying like, "Hey, you need help," and you are willing if you have the resources to help me as well. It's not about I'm the big organization and I am coming here to bestow my gifts upon you. It's hey, you're part of my community. You're another human being. I'm going to help you. It's to me, it's a lot less of a hierarchical way of like helping people, right? It's going to people in your community and exactly, it's you are reaching out to people on a human to human basis, saying, "Hey, there we are going to do whatever we can to help you, and hey, if you can come along for the ride, if you're able to also help others, that's great." It's about fostering people in the community, having the ability to go out and help other people in the community, not having to rely on some organization that is coming down from on high.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's great. We did talk about that in one of our first mutual aid info sessions, and we have the slides, so I'll make sure to share them with everybody here. But I think that's a great way to distinguish it because a lot of people do ask, like, oh, well, a charity in my area is already doing this, and that is true. But when we think about mutual aid, just for everyone here, just a brief there's a lot of like 501c3s. Those are the majority of nonprofits, and then there are 501c4s, which are a much smaller group, and those are the ones that can do like more advocacy. But 501c3s are typically restricted from the amount of like engagement they can get in political manners. um, and so that can actually really make it difficult for them to do a lot of what mutual aid does because they can't. Mutual aid is kind of inherently political. It's working outside of systems that we have set in place and being like, okay, well, you're another human, so I'm going to help you. Not having a lot of, for a lot of nonprofits, there are reporting measures that they have to do for grants. They're competing for grants, and that kind of determines what they're able to do. So there are some good charts. I think the biggest one I've seen that makes a lot of sense to me is Dean Spade, who wrote the book Mutual Aid. He's made a chart kind of distinguishing mutual aid from charity, and I can send that link. And it's really good to kind of distinguish that. Yes, a tool sharing library is an excellent idea. I have
Great
one
idea.
in my town. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
great idea.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's and exactly what you said. Like organizations, even if they, even the best of them, and as we all probably know, there's a lot of questionable stuff that sometimes goes on with all these larger charity organizations, which is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, they are still they're a government regulated organization. There's a lot of things they have to adhere to. If they fail, then there's not really any big organization that says step it up and take what they're doing. and mutual aid is much more on the ground. It's about doing what you can in your community, like unbound by a lot of the regulations that would otherwise like hinder a large organization who may not even have a great grasp on what your community needs, because not all these large organizations are necessarily working only in their own communities, which isn't a bad thing, but that also means they might not have a full grasp on what is needed.
Yeah, exactly. So we have some questions in here, and you guys may not be quite at this point because I know you're starting out. But what's the benefit of making so like a mutual aid group official? Is that only for when you're dealing with money? So I guess kind of like becoming a legal entity. Do you need that, or can you that kind of question?
Yeah, I mean, so not really. So, I mean, obviously, you want to be aware of the legal ramifications in your area because, regardless of what you align on a political level, you still have to deal with the reality that there are possibly legal ramifications for some things you do. I know that some cities, some states, there's very strict laws against feeding people who are unhoused. I know in Atlanta, they love to harass food not bombs about that. So that being aware of it is great. Mutual aid, I would say there's no necessarily no problem with becoming like a legal business entity and becoming a nonprofit and all that. But the thing about mutual aid is trying to distinguish itself from that, right? Like I feel like there is a lot more you can do when you aren't, if you're not going out and doing the same things that a charity organization does, which is what they do, right? They become a business entity, they become a nonprofit, they go through all the bureaucratic steps for that. Mutual aid is not about going out and doing large work on a nationwide scale. It's about doing work in your community. Um, so for us, at least particularly, we're not too concerned about starting like a nonprofit or anything like that. It's more of getting the community together and building relationships, building a support network. Right. That's kind of where we're coming at from this. Is we want to gather marginalized people in our area, which is in rural West Georgia. There's not a lot of queer community support organizations or support networks. Me and my partner, when we started this, we're kind of isolated from like anybody. Like we have the people we know at work, and coworkers are coworkers, and that's all great and all. But as far as having like people in our community who we felt we could rely on, there wasn't much of that. And that's kind of the core of mutual aid. It's about building interpersonal relationships and building a support network and a group of people more so than it is about building a large nonprofit like bureaucratic network. You know what I mean? It's about people who are connected and know each other and are able to help each other when the need arises.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I have for everybody here, we have a mutual aid kind of it's a portion of our resource drive for General Strike, and for anybody who's very interested in kind of like the legal and monetary aspect of mutual aid, there are resources in here that talk more in depth about it. Um, I think that that's a good place to check to like really get a an understanding of the options. There's one document in there that like runs through all the options for managing money with mutual aid and things like that. I think there was a group who came and spoke with us a couple weeks ago, and they do direct cash distribution to unhoused folks, and so they kind of just use Cash App and like they just do that and it's fine. And so it does depend, of course, but there are options that are a little bit more official as well. Let's see. We have another question. So since it seems like you didn't know anyone when you first got started, can you give us a picture of what that looked like? How did you get the word out? How did you get started? What were some of your initial projects?
Yeah, no, of course. And like I said to you in the DMs on Blue Sky, and I've noted here, we came at this very fresh. We said, hey, you know what? We have this set of beliefs, and we have this set of ideological beliefs, and we see that there's issues. Let's do something. And then we said, awesome. Let's do some. What's that look like? And so honestly, it can be a little confounding at first because there's so many places you can start, right? Like the main thing is for us at least was where to begin. Do we begin with, do we set up a meeting? Do we start putting posters up? Do we go to people at work? Like there was a lot of those conversations, right? Of okay, where do we get our foot in the door? For us, and this kind of goes back to the whole everybody has a skill conversation of you start with what you know. Both me and him are very much kids of the internet age. So we, with the graphic design backgrounds, knowing how to navigate social media, those things alone are good places to start. Just having the blue sky up, we weren't really having a lot of activity on it, but that allowed General Strike to find us, and now we're here speaking to everyone here, and this is getting our word out, right? So it's the small things that seem like maybe they might be inconsequential, but getting the word out nowadays is easy as long as you're willing to go out and actually put your name on something and just start the process. You have to start it somewhere. For us, that's what it looked like. It was me and him sitting in a room going, okay, great, what do we do? And then we started putting the social media together. We started putting what we want the organization's identity to be. Started building those things. Started looking at areas near us that were within the area that we wanted to start building the community. Started finding places to hold meetings. Started finding, okay, we are not by any means super veteran activists or super veteran mutual aid people. So maybe the big thing is we can start gathering people who are also like us and like just getting started, and we can go out to these other organizations and these other activities are already going on. Go support a food not bombs, or go support a protest of some kind as a group. Like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all new to this. It's easier to get into that side of things and start learning what to do when you are with friends, right? With community. And that's kind of what we're doing is, hey, we're new at this. And considering that there's no real support networks in the state of Georgia, there's probably a lot of people like us who are new to this and want to get started. So what better way to do it than gather all those people together and figure it out?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's part of also why I know when we chatted, it was like, well, we're newer, so just keep that in mind. And I think that these conversations are incredibly important because a lot of folks here are going to be newer, and it really does. Sometimes you hear like, oh, it starts with a conversation, and you're like, I know, but I feel like I've had so many conversations, and blah, blah. But it really does. Like, especially if you have a very like you have this idea and you're like, I want to do this, and then other folks are like, oh, I also want to do this, and it does build up. I think that's how a lot of mutual aid groups get started. So sometimes we have more established groups come on here and speak with us. I think having newer groups as well is super important, because these ideas and thoughts and how you got started and how you're getting started still are going to be very useful, especially as stuff gets worse. I'm sure in
Yeah.
this country, people will be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And these are the very first steps, which is super helpful. But we
Oh
do
yeah.
have,
No, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I was just saying, yeah, exactly. Like, and that's why I'm excited that we're doing this is because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who are, as things continue to crumble, are going, "Oh, what do I do? How do I get started?" And the easiest thing is like hearing somebody else who's like not from a really well solidified organization like Food Not Bombs or one of these bigger organizations that has a lot of weight, a lot of history behind it, or people who are in more secluded areas like ourselves. Hearing them going, "Hey, this is how we got started." That is sometimes an
Yeah. So we have this question in the chat. On that note, what is the biggest obstacle you've encountered in your work?
Honestly, the biggest thing is kind of what we've already gone over, which is where to start. How do you start getting the word out? Right. That's for us. A lot of this was easy. Like, hey, what do we want the identity of the organization to be? What did we want our work to focus around? What are the things, the kinds of people we wanted to bring together? That was kind of the easy stuff. The hard part was going, okay, not being veterans at this, how do we gather these people in a place and make people motivated to want to do it? Um, that has been something that has been a little bit of a struggle, because especially when you're not in a big city, you're in a very red, very rural area, where it's, sometimes feels not the safest thing to be going out and being like, "Hey, do you want to come to this group called Pink Arrow that has the pink triangle for a symbol?" And they're gonna, at best, look at you weird. And so, like, it's a lot of getting over that, right? Of like, hey, you just have to get out there and start putting the word out, right? Um, and it's been getting easier over time. And honestly, it's never as scary as the things that you imagine in your head, right? It's always, for the most part, even in, very rural, secluded areas, there's, already where you are going to find the people that you want in the organization, the people who are going to do a good job in the organization and who want to help, even if you don't really necessarily know it. Like, once you actually start putting on paper, hey, where can we start finding people to do this? You'll start thinking of the places that, oh, we met so and so over at this place. I bet, like, we can meet other people who are like minded there. And once you start putting things on paper, it becomes easier to start knowing where the search, where to look.
Yeah. So, what was one of your favorite moments since starting this work as well?
Honestly, I really enjoyed coming up with the identity of the group. I really enjoyed, and again, that's something that I think is very important to take away from this is mutual aid work and organization work should not be like always all the time something growing, right? Make sure that when you're doing it, you start off with something that excites you. Because I mean, let's be fair, like with everything that's going on and the crumbles and everything that's constantly bombarding us, it can sometimes be hard to focus down on one thing, right? Like, because you're focused. I got to work. I got, like, oh God, what's this executive order say? Like, you're always somewhere. So make sure that when you're doing something like this, not only is it fun for you, it's fun for the people involved, right? For me, I had ton of fun coming up with the identity of the group, ensuring that, of like, hey, like, we have this thing, look how cool it is, and look what we're gonna do, and like seeing people react to that, right? That's been my favorite part. Is like, hey, there's this idea we have, and like watching it slowly become real, like when you're talking to people and you're like, hey, here's this, like, look at what, what we're going to be doing and like what we want to do, and we're going to be meeting here, and seeing people react to that is has been fun. Like, that never gets old, right? Of seeing people respond to your idea in a positive way, respond to the work in a positive way, and want to help.
Yeah, so that goes kind of into my next question, which is how has your community responded to the work you're doing and what kind of feedback have you received so far?
So far, like I said, like, we being small, luckily we haven't gotten a lot of negative feedback, but that's because mostly we're still, getting the gears turning. For the most part, it's been a lot of interest, right? It's been a lot of interest, but so far it's been, um, since the group is still gearing up and we haven't done like any big events or big activities yet. Um, for the most part, it's been interest. Like with General Strike coming in, asking us to speak. That's, been a great response to us. Like that, like just having this is not only motivating, but I think it's important, hearing from people who are still getting started out. Um, so far, it's been mostly positive, right? It's people are showing interest. Now, does that always translate into like, where can I sign up? No, but like the initial interest that we've been getting is good. It's showing that there's momentum going. So I'd say nothing negative. For the case studies we have, it's been relatively positive.
That's good. That's good. I know that that probably feels good. And yes, being prepared for possibly negative feedback is good. But even with the negative feedback, that can be constructive in a way. Like, oh, maybe they
Oh
have
yeah.
something legitimate to say about it, or maybe they're just being assholes, and that's fine
Y-
too. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, yeah. I mean, constructive feedback's always great. I don't think a lot of people necessarily in our area, like when you first tell them about, hey, this is a mutual aid organization, they go, huh? A what? What's that? Is that like a charity? Sorta, so like it turns into a lot of those of explaining the ins and outs of it, which is fun in its own way. Educating people is always good, and like as soon as you find the right way to explain it, most people when they hear it are on board. Like that's a big thing. Not to go on off a different tangent, but one big thing about mutual aid is at least in the red areas like this, right? Very red, very rural. People have a very knee jerk reaction to certain words and buzzwords. But when you break down mutual aid to its bare essentials, most people are on board with it. It's very rare that you just see somebody who's like so diehard of like, not in my America, not giving somebody free something if they're starving to death. Like most people are like, oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So I think this is a comment. Let's see, about people would set up babysitting co-ops. Yes, definitely babysitting co-ops. That's one thing where we are lacking, I would say, on resources in the general strike. I think it's hard to find other folks because we don't ever want to reinvent the wheel. If the stuff is out there, we just want to collect it and get it out to people. But yeah, babysitting co-ops are very interesting, and that's not something I've experienced in. So maybe we can get somebody to come speak with us in the future about that.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I'd be
Yeah.
interested in that as well.
Yeah. So, what is the long term vision for your group, and what goals do you have for the future?
So the long term vision is we want to create something that's going to be long lasting in our area of Georgia at least. If other people from other parts of the state or across the country want to kind of follow that model, great. But the main thing that we want to focus on is we want there to be a mutual aid organization 20 years from now that's still following this model, that's um, focused on supporting queer people in the area, and then those same people supporting their communities, right? Like the foundation we want to build is primarily helping support people who are like us in our community, in the LGBTQ plus community. Um, and once we have that pillar, pushing them to help not only other queer people in their communities, but just people in general, right? And that's really what we want for the long term. Is we want something that's gonna stay around, and so that there's not going to be the same issue that we're facing in 5-10 years, if somebody's going, I'm trans or I'm queer, and I don't have a community that's can support me. I feel like I'm alone. We want to keep people from feeling that, right? And that can be difficult in areas like where we live. And so that's our long-term goal, is being able to bring people in our community together and support not only other organizations like Food Not Bombs or Indivisible, but also start holding our own large activities and being able to really be a self-sufficient organization.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So, okay, so the favorite moment since starting this work. So I think we did have that question answered, but it was mostly, and yeah, you can build on this if needed, if I, whatever. But I think the response was getting to build the, no, you're totally fine. You're good. Getting to build the identity of the group, and seeing people respond to it, and the interest that that is generated as people see what is being done. Is that
Oh
about
yeah, like
correct? Yeah.
yeah. There's not like I can't really pick out one particular moment because I've been as we've been gearing up, it's a lot of talking and people like sharing the idea, and it it's just every time like you get that response, like get people interested in it. Like right now, this is probably my new favorite moment of being able to speak to all of you and kind of get people's thoughts and let people ask their questions and hopefully make it a little easier for somebody to start an organization in their own community.
All right. And so for my next question, I have, what tips would you give to people who are looking to get involved in mutual aid?
Yeah, no, of course. So like this is something I think I've touched on a little bit throughout some of the other questions. Um, the main thing we tell people is, especially for people like us who are just starting off, is you're not aiming to build some large comprehensive logistics network in a day, right? This is the mutual aid, at least from the perspective that we're taking it, is it's about the small things as well as the large things. and the first step can always be, getting to know people around you. Like something as simple as going to your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends, people you have connections with, and be willing to help them. See what they need, and being like, hey, let me just. So I have a bunch of ingredients to make a big pot of soup, and it's not gonna just feed me and my partner. I know, the family next door has a lot of kids, and they're maybe in a rough place. Go over and be like, hey, I have, all this soup. Would you guys like want to come over? Or like, hey, can we give you some? Or like just going over and being like, hey, there's an elderly woman next door. Or like you would notice that she needs something done around her, like outside of her house. Going over and being like, hey, let me help you. Like mutual aid at the core of it, big or small, is not something that you need an organization like try to build an organization like PAWGA for, or you don't need an organization like Food Not Bombs. Mutual aid can be as simple as you living alone in your apartment and going across to the apartment next door and being like, hey, what's up? What do you need? Or like, when you're passing people and like you see that they're having trouble helping them, and then making sure that they feel okay, not only helping you but helping others. It's kind of a pay it forward model, right? It's based off of the mutual respect that we should all have for each other as humans, and kind of fighting against the concepts that our society forces upon us, like rugged individualism, and you have to grab your bootstraps. And I can tell you right now, being where I am in my professional life, it's not bootstrap. It's never once a bootstrap. Everybody from the oligarchs at the top of the ladder to the people who don't even have a house. Everybody has needed help from somebody at some point, and that's the reality of being human. And that's what mutual aid's about.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. No, that's excellent. I know where I live, I live in kind of the outside of the main city, and so we just got a gas station put in, and there's no grocery store where I am, and so there's also a lot of elderly folks where I am, and so when at least this is my example of trying to think about how to help. Kind of at that mutual aid level of watching them walk over to the gas station because that's the only place that they can get their groceries. Okay, well, now we have a community garden plot that we recently got. How can we get in touch with these people if they would like some fresh produce? Because we have a house of two with me and my partner. We won't need all of that. And so that's not necessarily even working within a group. At some point, it'd be great if there was a group, but that's also just looking around at my community and what are the things that I notice, kind of like how you guys started, like that need to be addressed, and could be like I could easily do that. So there are lots of different, it can be an individual level, it can be a group level. A lot of work, it can be like really good at a group level. But one group that came and spoke to us is again, they came and spoke earlier, was them and their partner, and that was it. And it can work that way too. It's not one model, I would say.
Oh yeah, no, that's the great thing. Like, and that kind of when we go back to distinguishing mutual aid from a charity organization, that's a big thing. Is people when they, especially people who are just being exposed to these ideas, they hear mutual aid and they automatically go to what we know, which is charity networks and big organizations, and that is not what mutual aid is. Mutual aid is such a simple concept. Like we do it in a lot of small ways. We kind of participate in it every day. Like and one thing is if you help people out, a lot of times they will surprise you. Um, like this is kind of maybe a silly example, but something as simple like if you've ever experienced like you're in a drive-through like at Starbucks and somebody pays for your drink ahead of you, and then like you go, oh wow, that was really nice. I'm gonna pay for the person's behind me. In a way, that's kind of what mutual aid is, like in a silly kind of more capitalistic form, but like that's, hey, somebody help me, I'm gonna help the person behind me, and then that person goes, you know, oh wow, that person helped me, I'm gonna help the person behind me, and it just keeps going like that. And that can you don't need a large, group or a monolith to do that. Like you can just be you and do that.
Yeah, so we have this question about how do you start a community garden. So I know you guys aren't doing that, so I'll touch on it a little bit. So for my community garden stuff, there's actually it is a nonprofit who goes and they build the gardens in each neighborhood where I live. So they're making their way. They finally just opened this new one in this area where it's kind of a food desert. So that's where we have our garden plot. But essentially, they build the garden, they provide the tools, they have a shed, and like have volunteers, us, who have to do like 3 hours a week to maintain the garden, and then we also do our garden plot. And there's like a sliding scale for paying for your garden plot. I know there are a lot of areas where they don't have that model, and like the community will come together and get a community garden started. So there are different ways to do it. We did have our first talk in this series was from a group who does community gardening, but they do theirs from more of an anarchic organizing standpoint. So they just started it. They didn't ask permission. They were like, this is a lot that has been vacant for a very long time, and so then they just started gardening there. So that can be an option as well. They also, now have a relationship with the landlord after the landlord was like, what are you guys doing? And then it worked out, but they're in Portland, Oregon. So they made clear, like in the talk with them, that may not work everywhere. So there's also kind of that anarchic way of doing it. But yeah, it depends for sure. But the first place, of course, you can look around and search like community garden in my area and see if there's anybody who's done anything. And if not, try and see if there's interest and kind of go from there. I would say. So yeah, community gardening, we can have another community garden person come and speak with us too. Um, so my last question is, what resources do you suggest for people to learn more about this work?
Yeah. So I'll kind of go to right where we got a lot of our ideas when we were first starting out. One thing that gave both of us a lot of ideas was there's a podcast called "It Could Happen Here," run by a former war journalist, Robert Evans. They have quite a few episodes on that podcast that speak directly about, hey, organizing. A lot, and some of it's just like pep talk, like, hey, go out and, like, it's that easy, go out and do it. Like, that is, I think, a good resource. It's very accessible. Honestly, one thing that's really helped is just kind of like what you say about community gardens in the area, researching what other groups are doing and how they've done it in the past. Like, history can teach you what to do and what not to do. So one thing is, like, one of our main goals is not just gathering people and then going, hey, yes, cool people do good stuff. Like, honestly, the whole Cool Zone Media podcast group is there's a lot. They talk a lot about this. Maybe Behind the Bastards less so, but um, the big thing we want to do is, hey, gather these people up and go out and help other organizations, and through that we can learn how to bring that stuff closer to our community. Right? It's like the positive version of boomerang theory. You go out, you help Food Not Bombs. Hey, like, how are they doing it? You talk to those people. You bring that back to, like, in our case, rural West Georgia, and go, okay, cool. This is how they're doing it. This is how they're organizing it. We know the risks. We know, we all got tickets from Atlanta PD while we're out there, so we know what to expect. Where can we do that in our side of things? And that's really something great that you can do. Is the biggest resource is obviously people around you, right? Um, Going out and just, even if your idea is, hey, I feel alone and I want to go with a bigger group of people. I don't want to just go and feel like a stranger somewhere. Like, that's kind of like what we're doing, is like, hey, we're gathering these people who are interested in it, and we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna go help X, Y, and Z group, or like there's an X, Y, and Z protest going on. You go there and you go with this group of people and you take what you learn back. And of course, like, there's always, like, the theory side of things. There's things like conquest of bread and stuff. That's like less practical. That's maybe more of like how to explain ideas to people. But as far for us, that's kind of where we've gotten all of our tips and tricks.
Oh yes, yeah. The anarchist ecology design was shared in that community garden meeting. If anyone is interested who was not able to attend that one, that yeah, they shared some resources there. We also have in our main resource drive for General Strike, the group that does food distribution and cash distribution for unhoused folks in DC. They created a resource to share with everybody. So I'll share that at the end of this, the drive where a lot of that information is. I'll share it again. But going back to, yes, what you were saying, I feel like a lot of the time with mutual aid, folks sometimes feel like I also just want to say this, like, feel like you have to wait for permission or for somebody to say it's okay to do certain things, or we have this idea that, oh yes, we have to work through, which we've talked about, we have to work through this organization to do this stuff, and the reality is, like, you don't, there's so many things you can do that are outside of organizations and outside of, very established groups, where it's mutual aid, and it is probably a bit more enjoyable. You don't have to report numbers for grants. You don't have to write grant applications if you don't want to. It's just helping your community. And some with the community gardening stuff, they do organize on an anarchist organizing model. So they didn't wait for permission or for asking if it was okay. They just knew that their community needed food, and so they did it. And there's that as well. So just remembering that, if there's a need, like if, queer folks in West Georgia need something, that you don't have to wait for anybody to go out and do the work. Nobody, like, you can do the research, and you can, figure out what to do from there, and ask questions and be curious and all of that. Um, and it's very, it can be very doable. Sometimes, of course, there's difficult things, but I always like to say that, because we don't need permission to take care of our communities. That's something that inherently is very human and that we should be doing anyways, that I think we've gotten separated from. So that's
Yeah.
my little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. We come at this whole thing from a very anarchist viewpoint. A lot of the times, unfortunately, the way things work in the society is there's a lot of systems in place that discourage people from doing this. Like a lot of the times, you want to help your community, and there will be specifically things in place that tell you no, don't do that. So definitely, I think be act in a way that is intelligent and smart, but it uh, waiting for permission won't always be to your benefit. Sometimes you just need to do something. And like a great example, I've brought up food not bombs several times. Here in Atlanta specifically, they're constantly like, it's kind of one of those things that they wait across the street. They kind of let you do your thing, and then as soon as you're done, they come over and write you your tickets. Like it's kind of that's the rigmarole. That's just the way life is when you're doing that kind of work. Um, Obviously, there's been a lot of hubbub around here about, like, the Cop City thing and the unfortunate stuff that happened during that. Um, from all levels, whether it's helping your neighbors to doing something on a scale like that. Um, Always be, you know, it it's always okay to help people, right? Like, at the end of the day, anybody who is really fighting tooth and nail for you to not help somebody who's starving or help a kid who needs clothes is an asshole, right? And like, you shouldn't need their permission anyway. Like, as long as you're doing the right thing, that's always the good thing to do.
Yeah, so we have this question, I think, about the food not bomb stuff. What is the justification for not feeding unhoused people?
Well, I mean, the justifications that they give uh, is usually along the lines of it's against the law. Like, that's like a lot of the time that's the answer you'll get, right? Like, if you're out there and you're helping unhoused people and you're giving them food, is unfortunately, I have a lot in my younger years. I have a lot of experience being around police officers in a not as antagonistic standpoint, and even then, a lot of it's like, well, it's the law. It's the law. Like, why they put that law out there in the first place. A lot of the justification is you'll hear from people who support not feeding people who are hungry is, oh, well, if you feed them, then they're going to come back, and then the businesses are going to get less business because people are going to be afraid to walk down the street, and they're going to harass people. And a lot of it's that in real life. It's never as bad as anybody who's that against it says. Like, the cops come at from a standpoint of it's the law, I'm going to write you a ticket. People who support what they're doing come at it from it's ruining the community because these people are going to be around. At the end of the day, a lot of the justification comes from a standpoint that is, in my opinion, these people are not worthy of sharing my space. They are lesser people because they do not have a house. There's the automatic assumption of you see an unhoused person, and it's they're this or that. They're a crime. They're a criminal. They're a drug addict. They're like they just there's an automatic assumption, and they don't want to hear more about it. And that's a lot of the justification. It's dehumanizing them to a point so that you don't have to feel bad.
Oh yeah, affordable housing and control rent. So that I am looking into hopefully getting a tenant union to come speak with us at some point. And I think they'll be able to talk about that a lot more. I know Berkeley Tenant Union is like killing it. There's Oakland Tenant Union. So hopefully we'll be able to get a group that can come speak about that specifically a bit more. Trying to get a good, a good mesh of folks who can provide different perspectives. Okay, so we have one last question for you, at least so far. What projects have you done so far as in Pink Arrow?
All right. So far, everything we've done, it's we haven't hosted anything ourselves, right? Like I want to get that out there. Like there is not like if you go look, there's not pictures of a Pink Arrow event. It just hasn't happened yet. A lot of the things we've done is getting people motivated to go out and help these other organizations, as I've mentioned a few times, because that's how we're learning, right? Like if you go out and you feed people with food not bombs, or you go out and you go to a indivisible meeting, even though we may not share the same necessary political beliefs or something of a group we're helping. That's not the point, right? The point is helping people who see the same problems you do and helping them in their cause, right? And so, in my opinion, that's completely fine, right? Especially while you're building, especially when you're, oh yeah, no, 100%. Like if you have friends, you have family members, you have just people in your community who are like your past people on the street, and you have a conversation. You see your neighbor all the time, like, this and that really sucks. Like, I don't know what to do. Sometimes it's really pays to just go, hey, um, I know that there's a food not bombs chapter, or I know that there's a protest going on here. Like, let's go together. Like that. It's that simple, right? Like knowing that there are other people around you who want to do something, it's always easier to have people around you who go, "Yeah, let's do it together." There's a strength that comes with that kind of community, and really why um that's really why we started this, right? That's the kind of the group of the full thing is one day, like we kind of prepared for like, hey, if people wanted to like follow like kind of the same model of like helping queer people in rural communities, like it's the whole thing is pink arrow stone shield. Like you have you build a community with brick by brick to kind of shelter people. That's kind of the idea. You build a stone shield to help shelter people, so they have people to fall back on. They have a shield of, hey, I need rent, or hey, I'm going hungry. Like there's that community support of those bricks to help you, and then there's also that security in numbers. There's that arrow portion, like, hey, these people are going to defend you. Like if worst comes to pass, these are the people you can rely on. And that all starts as simple as, hey, let's gather together and let's go learn how to do something. To quote a show that's on recently, rebellions are built on hope, and like, so are communities, built on hope. Um, so that's my tip to everybody is it's as simple as, hey, friends, let's go and help some people today.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So in more rural places, that's going to be the reality of where a lot of folks start. And so I think we see, groups in, I know for us, even in Chicago, especially our chapter for General Strike is doing an excellent job and like having certain events that are their own and being able to go out and help. And have these very consistent meetings. And that's not the reality for, say, Montana, where we have a very low number of people who are organizing with us right now. And just I grew up in a rural place in Georgia, and just knowing like, yes, there's a lot of mutual aid that kind of goes on, even if it's not named in rural areas. So that's important to remember, that it may already be happening, even if they don't really know that's what they're doing. But also that you have to first start with, there's kind of like sometimes you feel like an island in a rural place, especially if it's a red rural place, and building that community is part of not only helping you but also helping other folks. So even that is super important. So we look at like big cities right now who are just going, they're resisting, there are mutual aid groups everywhere. I know DC has a mutual aid group for each of their wards. We don't have that here. I think we have one mutual aid group where I live, and that's it. And it's mostly just a Facebook page where people can post stuff. And so that's just the reality. And we have to also look at how we can organize in that. Let's see, at
Yeah,
college.
and that's
Yeah, go ahead.
just to kind of piggyback off that, especially like down here in rural Georgia, like there's a lot of that, like the southern helpfulness that people have, and they don't call it mutual aid, but like just to kind of give an anecdote, um, there's a neighbor of mine who runs like a little lawn care business, and like I've been hiring him to do my lawn because why not? We rent and something like it's expensive to buy a riding mower. And one day the winter storm was coming, and this is when we first moved here, and we weren't really prepared for the how cold winters in Georgia can get. And he was just driving by the house and was like, "Hey, I noticed that like you didn't really prepare your sprockets or any of this for that. Like, I'm just gonna come over and I just did them for you." Like, just came over, did them, didn't like, and just and he's just friendly neighbor guy. He doesn't know anything really about mutual aid unless they tell him. But that's exactly what it is. Like he drove by, he said, "Oh wow, like they're not ready. Like I have the stuff. Let me just go do it." And he just did it. A lot of people, especially at least like in this rural area, like they do mutual aid because it's just hey, you take care of your neighbor. That's what it is. And so if you're in a more rural area like us, and you have that kind of like interactions with people, that's the doorway into like getting them to understand, like, hey, it's just like that time you came by and you put coverage on my sprockets for winter. Like, and that's the beauty of it is that it's that simple. Like, it's driving by and saying, oh, they need help. Let me help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that was also a big reason I wanted to have you come talk for this is rural areas are always it's just going to be different. Any community in itself is going to be different when you're organizing in it. But just, yes, cities have a lot of resources, but there's a lot going on in rural areas, and we also have to understand how best to organized there and what makes sense. So I think it's great. But I do want to open up the floor for any last questions as we close out from anyone. All right, I think. Okay, perfect. I think that yeah, I
Awesome.
think this is good. Yeah, thank
I
you
either
so
did a really
much.
good job or a really bad job. I like
Yeah,
it.
exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. I think that yeah, a great place to start. A lot of
No,
thank
I'm glad
yous.
it helps.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm glad it helps. Like, that's the big thing is like it's great hearing from big organizations because they've been doing it, but a lot of the times I think things that get missed, especially when you're a big organization that's been doing it for a long time, is you forget to touch on where it started, and you may not have the fresh in your mind of like how difficult it was to start. So yeah, I mean, definitely. I encourage everybody, like, yeah, if you see a problem, address it in the way you can. Like, start from what you know and build from there. Like, we started from what we knew, and we're building from there. And that's all. That's the best you can do, and you surprise yourself. Like, keep at it, and a few years from then, now you'll be looking back, going, "Wow, can you believe where we started?" And that's the dream.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much. It was very enlightening, very helpful. I think it's a great place for folks to start. I sent the mutual aid resource drive one more time. Pink Arrow, I did send, let's see, the blue sky at some point. Here we go. So I'll send that one more time just so everybody has those links to connect,
Yeah.
especially if you're in the West Georgia area. But
Yeah,
yeah,
especially,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and just, sorry not to, definitely if you're in, the West Georgia area, keep up with the Blue Sky. We are gonna plan to hold, like, an introductory event, like an in-person thing, next month, like, early next month, so most likely we'll be getting the message out on that, through a Signal link eventually on our Blue Sky. So, if you guys, are here, reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Yes, awesome. Yes, thank you so much. Super appreciate it. And yeah, so the next session for this will be next Sunday. Again, same time, same link. So I think that we'll be discussing community defense next week, kind of in light of the ice raids and all the stuff that happened last week that were very stressful. So we're going to talk about that. So that will be exciting, and that is completely nonviolent. Sometimes when people hear community defense, they're like, oh my god, but no, it's just talking through some of those things that we can do to protect our communities. So yeah, that'll be next week. Right.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your weekend.